And the point isn't to pin your attention to the breath in a forceful way, but to just gently let the breath breathe you.
Welcome to the Be Here Now Guest Podcast. This series features a collection of teachings and conversations centered around mindfulness, spiritual growth, and living a life in balance. Each week, our diverse network of guest teachers and hosts offer up wisdom and practices from a different spiritual path and perspective. If you would like to support this podcast, please visit BeHereNowNetwork.com/donate.
Last night, we took the refuges and precepts, and they're really all about living with integrity. And I love how in the 12 steps they say one day at a time. But here, all we really have to do is live one moment at a time. And we can do this moment by moment. And just a very, a light word about instructions, which is to take them lightly. They are offered as guidance, but as Tuchen said last night, this is your journey. So please do the practice that you enjoy doing, and if the guidance that is offered is helpful to you, great. If not, just keep going in your own way. So today, doing some mindfulness of breathing. And this is a practice that we think of sometimes as a preliminary practice, but it's really not at all. It can take you all the way to full waking up. And if for any reason you have the breath is not relaxing for you, maybe you have asthma or other kind of issue with breathing, then please do a loving kindness practice, a compassion practice, whatever is good for you, and we'll do some more of those this afternoon. So resting your attention very gently with the movement of the breath in the body. Noticing where it's more perceptible to you. Maybe in the belly, the rise and fall of the diaphragm. Maybe in the nostrils, the upper lip, wherever you sense and feel the movement of the breath, you can rest your attention there. And seeing if you can keep the breath company with your attention. Attentive to the beginning of a breath, to the length of it, and to its vanishing point. And of course, the first insight of insight meditation, which we're doing here, is how unruly, how out of control, how like a waterfall, the torrent of thinking and emotion that pours through us can be. So tuning into the breath as a kind of rudder to navigate our inner experience. And when the attention wanders away into the past, everything that came before this moment, or the future, everything that may follow, just gently tuning into this moment. This breath. And just as you notice the beginning and the vanishing of each breath, the same is true of sounds. And noticing the way sounds appear and disappear, are loud or soft. If you notice sleepiness, just bring a little more attention to the in-breath, the energizing inhalation, breathing in the aliveness of this moment. And if your mind is busy and distracted this morning, just bring a little more attention to the out-breath, the calming, relaxing breath. Following that breath all the way to its ending where it just kind of dissolves into space. And the point isn't to pin your attention to the breath in a forceful way, but to just gently let the breath breathe you. Being mindful of the breath while the mind is also taking up other things, but staying attuned and connected to the movement of the breath helps us feel safe and relaxed. And again, if the breath isn't, a source of relaxation and soothing for you, to just stay connected to your contact, the touch of your feet on the floor, the feeling of your clothes on your body, awareness of this contact and connection only happens in the present moment. And one of my early teachers said that the best way to tame the crazy, busy mind is to give it something to play with, a toy, like a teddy bear. So in this meditation, the teddy bear is your breath. When we're worried or sad, teddy bear can cheer us up, like a child with a teddy bear. The child gets interested in other things and picks them up and plays with them, but always comes back to her bear. And you see how the mind, too, constantly picks up and gets distracted by things, but it's easy to find the breath again, to tune into the contact of the body again, over and over, coming back to the teddy bear of breath. One breath at a time, one moment at a time. Keeping this moment company with your mindful attention. Keeping the breath company. Just like holding a teddy bear in a in a gentle cuddle. Noticing how each breath is born, has its being, and disappears. We're really looking at studying the birth and death of experience, how a breath arises, moves, and passes away. Allowing the breath to breathe in its own natural rhythm, you can see how it's ever changing. Sometimes slow and smooth, sometimes more rapid, a little choppy, always changing. And always changing in this great space of awareness. And this mindfulness of breath is exactly what the Buddha practiced when he experienced his great awakening. And from the poet Lynn Ungar. And yes, she says, and yes, what of your rushed and useful life? Imagine setting it all down. Papers, plans, appointments, everything. Leaving only a note. Gone to retreat to be lovely. Be back when I'm through with breathing. The teaching where the Buddha gave the instructions on breathing, and they're really, they're more and more detailed and specific so that your attention and concentration can get more and more refined. And that sutra is called Anapanasati. And he gave this teaching to his disciples, his followers, at the end of one of the annual 3-month rainy retreats, the rainy season retreats in Travasti, which was the capital of the kingdom where they were practicing. And a devoted follower named Anathapindika gave a whole forest. He gave it away outside of the city walls to the Buddha for his community. And you can go to India and you could visit the Jeddah Grove, and you can see still the crumbling buildings, the brick ruins of the monastery that they built. And of course, to this day, all that's really left are the remains of the walls. But you can see the yogi rooms and the outlines, where the monastics lived. And then you can imagine, 400 of them are on their 100-day rainy season retreat, listening to the talk. And you can kind of imagine hearing the rain dripping from the leaves of the forest. And imagine, now they've been meditating sincerely for 3 months. Here we've been meditating sincerely for a bit of a day and a little bit of an evening. But he gave this teaching on the full moon. And so again, you can imagine maybe the rain has stopped and the moon has come out from behind the clouds. And I like this because it's almost like we can travel back in time and hear him teach, offer these teachings. And of course, they've been meditating for months. So they're very settled and very present, and they're really, really listening, so that these teachings can be remembered and passed on year after year, century after century, to us right now to hear and to learn. And then in turn, you will recall and maybe pass them on. He just really explained all the benefit of bringing attention to the breath in this way. And I like to think of the breath as sort of, my partner, my companion, my lifelong companion. It's always here. It's always here for us as long as we're alive. And the steadiness of being with the breath sort of paradoxically creates more space, so that the space of awareness gets bigger and stronger too. So this is why we begin by focusing on the breath. And like I said, if it's in any way uncomfortable for you, there are other practices like loving kindness and compassion practices. And I want to invite you to come this afternoon, and we'll do some of those. So this is usually a time when, if you have questions about your practice or about living here, you can ask them. I don't know if people have questions already. It can be, just about how it is for you here, or it's a little early to have questions, but maybe you do. Maybe you're an early bird. And I know it can be, it can make you feel kind of shy to ask a question in front of all these people. in the hall, but there will be a chance, of course, for you to be in smaller groups and meet with teachers. But just if there's anything this morning, feel free, because I assure you a question that you have is on somebody else's mind as well. So it's a kind of generous thing to ask. Or any questions about the instructions, the teddy bear of breath, anything.
So thank you for those instructions. I found them very helpful. I'm wondering, did the Buddha have any particular instructions about how to relate to the gap between breaths?
It's an interesting question, and I'm not sure. The Buddha paid more attention, or invited us to pay more attention to the quality of the breath itself. Like, is it long? Is it short? Is it smooth? Is it ragged? You know, the qualities of the breath. But I think what you're asking is really important, because when you bring attention to the little pause between the breaths, where the turnaround, you know, one breath vanishes, the next one is born, there is that little pause. And the quieter you get, the more perceptible that pause is. And bringing attention to that pause is actually a great way to steady the mind and develop a little more concentration. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. I've never even heard that. James just told me something that after 50 years I have never heard, which is that during the gap between the breaths, you can have a touch point, like your lips or your tongue. Is that your hands? That assumes that you have a pretty good gap to do all that, but you'll experiment. You know, again, this is your journey and your practice, and you know what works really well to steady the heart for one person is not necessarily what's going to work for you. You know, just, it's like an invitation to be a kind of experimental or playful and see what works for you. Because sometimes we can just feel like, again, like you have to pin the breath down with your attention and stay riveted to it. And that kind of approach is uncomfortable and a little heavy-handed, and we don't need to do it that way. In fact, one of the great Thai forest meditation masters, Ajahn Buddhadasa, he said mindfulness of the breath isn't just being mindful of the breath itself, but being mindful of what else the mind is, what other subjects the mind is aware of along with the breath. So there's a lot of ways to practice, and we're offering you some different ways, but it's up to you to see what works in your own experience. And that was the whole point of how the Buddha taught. You know, he worked with himself, with what he developed in the laboratory of himself, and he didn't just share one-size-fits-all teachings. So, yeah, feel free to explore and experiment, but this is where the honesty part of mindfulness comes in. Just to be honest with yourself about when you're just having fun, you know, distracting yourself from being present by imagining all these different practices, and when you're actually in the experience, because he was also really clear. Feel the breath in the breath was the teaching, which I understand to mean feel the breath from within the experience of breathing, not by thinking about it or the exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide, blah, blah, you know, all the thinking about the breath, but from within the experience.
Hi. Can you read the poem the short poem that you read in the end again? The one about leaving a note. I'll come back.
You want me to read it? Did you say you wanted to hear it again?
If you can read it again, the poem
really
that says that I'll come back after I finished grieving.
I have to say, if just in case you're the poet, I have to say, I changed.
I am actually.
Okay.
I am coming back after I finish grieving.
then-
I hope.
I apologize to you as a poet. I did change
No,
the word.
I'm not.
She says, go to the fields to be
I'm
lovely.
not,
and I
I'm not,
said, go
I'm
to
not, I'm
retreat
not.
to be lovely. She says, and this is the end of a poem. I don't have the whole poem. I just picked this piece for this. And you, what of your rushed and useful life? Imagine setting it all down. Papers, plans, appointments, everything. Leaving only a note, gone, to retreat, to be lovely, be back when I'm through with breathing. And the name of the poet is Lynn Ungar, Ungr.
Thank you.
And thanks. I hear a lot of instruction on how to return to the breath when one's attention has strayed. And that feels like a very strong teaching that I've heard a lot. I rarely hear during meditations and after ways in which to not leave the breath in the first place. I mean, I know that's really obvious, but I stray for large periods of time. I think it would be better if I concentrated on not departing than strengthening my ability to come back. And I don't know if what James mentioned about the body and the hands is part of what would help me to stay with it. But yeah, any thoughts you have, I'm intrigued by.
Well, it's a great question. If only we knew what made us leave. It happens so fast, When you sit long retreats, you can start to see it. You can really start to see it. But that takes a subtle kind of attention, and it takes time to train and develop and cultivate and build that kind of attention. So for now, for us, at the beginning of a retreat, it's a paradox because returning to the breath is what will help you actually not leave. It's so strange because we feel like each time we return, oh no, I failed or I got lost or what made me leave. Well, sometimes what triggered the leaving, but what's more important, I think, actually here is to appreciate that the moment you realize you've gotten lost in thought or emotion or whatever it's been, the moment you realize that's a moment of mindful awareness, that moment. So it's something to actually celebrate and be glad about instead of maybe beating yourself up about, oh my God, I lost it again. So that movement of coming back, realizing and coming back, coming back is a strange expression really, because we haven't gone anywhere, but bringing the attention back to your chosen subject of meditation, and this morning it's the breath, that very movement is the training to stay. It doesn't feel like that, but it is. It's the training to stay. So if you have to do it 1,000 times during one meditation period, and you might be in despair thinking, this is really hard and I can't blah, 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 whatever the mind is saying. But if you have to do it 1,000 times, I don't know, it's like doing 1,000 reps at the gym. You're going to get really strong. It works like that. So.
Thank you.
Yeah. So thank you, everybody. Enjoy your practice this day, and thank you.